Hi everyone, welcome to the video lecture series of Object-Oriented Programming. In this video lecture, we will be discussing about the topic Approaches to Software Design. This topic belongs to Module 1. So these are the various topics that will be covered in this video lecture. We'll go one by one. First of all, we will see function-oriented design. The approaches to software design. It is divided into two categories. First among those two categories is this function-oriented design. That is what we are going to discuss first. As the name indicates, function-oriented. That means in this approach or in this format of designing, the importance is given to functions. That is why we are naming it as function-oriented. What are the different features of this function-oriented design? That is what we are going to explain next. The first feature of this design is top-down decomposition. We can take any example. In this slide, it is given, the example is given as making of a movie. There are two things, or there are two ways in which we can view that making of a movie. As you can see in this figure, making of a movie can be divided into so many subparts. Each of these parts are really important when we consider making of a movie, because if any one of this part is not there, then the movie will not be complete. So as you can see, for a movie we need a script. Those who know well about this films and all will be having an idea what's a script. Without a script, there is no movie. Script alone is not enough. We need cast and crew, somebody to act, somebody to shoot it, etc. For those people to shoot, they need camera. They need camera to record the movie. And finally, to group different scenes, we need to edit the movie. And finally, we'll get the entire movie as a whole. Okay, so the same thing can be viewed in a different way. So here we are first of all giving importance to, first of all we are considering the entire movie as a whole, and then we are dividing the movie into small subparts. So we are taking the entire product as a whole, and from that we are dividing it into subparts. That's known as top-down decomposition. That is, we are beginning from the top and then we are going downwards. That is known as top-down decomposition. Take another example of our college. We can view it in a different way. For example, college consists of so many students. Among these so many students, some students will be grouped to form a department. A department will have some faculties. So within the department, so many students will be given the charge of a faculty will be given the charge of some students. So many faculties grouped together form a department. So many departments grouped together form a college. College will have principal. Okay, so that is, we are going from the downwards. That is, the smallest element in a college is the student. Okay, then we are going towards the top. That is one way. We can also think of a college as in the opposite way. We are starting from the principal, then head of departments, then faculties, and then students. That way also we can view the college. So that is what we have to consider here. Everything can be viewed in different ways. So when we think about designing a software, there are two approaches to think about. First approach is function oriented. When we are using function oriented designing, then we are designing the project or software in a top down way. We are starting from the topmost level, then we are moving towards the least element. Okay, so I hope you understood what is this top-down decomposition. The next feature of centralized system state. That means the state of the system is centralized. We can describe this in another way. That is, certain elements or certain data of the entire system determines how that system must behave, or what the state, or through which state the system is going through. That is what we mean by centralized system state. For example, consider a library automation system. There may be so many functions for that library automation system. Regardless of the functions or regardless of the options we have in that software, it is the set of books that determines in which state that system is at present. In other words, if we take another example, if the power to decide something is given to a single person, consider a country in which the entire decision is taken by a single person. So say the president of that country decides what that country must do on each day. That means that is a centralized power, means the entire country will get affected based on that one decision. Whatever the president decides, the entire country must follow that. So the decision power is given to only one person. Okay, that is known as centralized system state. When we talk about programming, centralized system state means it is referring to the global variables. We know what is a global variable. In C programming and all, we have defined or we have discussed about global variables. Suppose we are dealing with a software in which there exists a global variable. So the entire software, a software means collection of programs, not just one program. So all the programs in that software may be using this single global variable. So depending upon the value of global variable, the functioning of each and every program will vary. So it is actually, we can say that it is actually the value of that global variable that is going to decide how these programs must behave. That is known as centralized system state. So in function oriented design, the state of the system or how the system must behave, it is decided by the values of certain data items. Okay, so that is what here it is written in the bold letters. The system state is centralized and shared among different functions. So there will be different functions. All these functions will be accessing some global variables. So depending upon the value of that global variable, the way in which these functions have to behave will change. That is known as centralized system state. You can go through the example mentioned here. It is that of a library automation system. There will be set of books. That is what determines the state of a library. There may be some books borrowed by some users. Some of them may be returning some books. We are not bothered about all those things. A library means it is set of books. So it is the books or the number of books that goes to determine how this library automation system must work. So this entire automation system is depending upon the set of books. So that is known as centralized system state. So these two are the core, what we can say, core functionalities or core features of function oriented design. The second approach to design a software is known as object oriented design. So if it was functions in the case of function oriented design, in object oriented design the importance is given to object. So what is an object? So in an object oriented design, the importance is given to objects. So how can we define an object? Or we can say that A software is considered as, or a system is considered as, a collection of objects. So what is an object? An object is something that has got some attributes and some behavior. These attributes are known as functions or methods. Okay, and the best example for objects is we the human beings itself, because each one of us has got the attributes, which includes our name, our age, our address, our weight, etc. All these are our attributes which defines ourselves, right? Each one of us has got a name. The names are different, have got a unique address. So all these things define ourselves, and each of us have got certain functionalities or methods that we perform, like we walk, we run, we talk. All these are different actions or functions that we perform. So an object can be considered as an entity which has got some attributes and some functionalities. We will discuss about objects and all in detail in the upcoming classes. For the time being, just understand that an object is anything that has got some attributes and some methods. Okay, and each object is responsible for managing the data it holds. That is the main thing that we have to remember about object oriented design. In function oriented design, there was something known as the global scope, global variables, that is the centralized system state. That is not available in object oriented design because of this feature. That means each object contains its own data, and the responsibility to manage those data, it belongs to that object alone. Okay, so if I have 10 objects, so consider 10 students or 10 human beings. Each of them has got their own name, their address, etc. Each of them have got all these functions like they talk, eat, walk, run, etc. But it is each one of them decides when to talk, when to eat, when to run. Does not depends upon each other. And all the data each human being hold, it belongs to that human being itself. So the entire system state is decentralized. Okay, that is what we have to understand from this. There is no global scope in object oriented design. We are dividing the entire software system into different objects. Each object will be having its own data and its own functions. And the data and functions each object handles have nothing to do with the data and functions of the other objects. Okay, and the data that is inside an object, or the data one object hold, it can be accessed by other objects only with the permission of this object. For example, I have some chocolates with me. That is my data. That is my content. If some of you want to take those chocolates, you want to access it through me. Without informing me, you won't be able to access it. Okay. So likewise, you people have got some books. If I want to borrow some books from you, I have to ask your permission first. I have to communicate to you. Without communicating to you, I cannot take that book. Okay, so the entire system state is decentralized because there is no shared data. Okay, because each object holds or stores its own data and its own functions. That is the most important feature of this object oriented design. There is no global scope. Consider the same example as we have seen in the function oriented design, the library automation software. In the function oriented design, we considered or we described that it is a set of books that is going to decide how this library automation software is going to work. When we consider the same software in terms of object oriented design, okay, we are considering this entire software as a collection of different objects. We are considering each library member as a object. So each library member will be having its own data and functions. Like data means the number of books the member hold right now, number of books he have completed reading or he have returned already. Functions like read a book, or he can borrow a book from the library, he can return a book to a library. Okay, so if I am a library member, I will have my own functions and my own data. Okay, so the methods defined for one object cannot directly refer to or change the data of other objects. So in a class of 60 students, each one of you are library member, right? Each one of you can borrow books from the library. If student 1 borrows some book from memory from library, it does not have anything to do with the books the student 2 can borrow. If student 1 borrowed 10 books, it's not going to reduce or increase the number of books the student 2 can borrow. Each of them is considered separate. Okay, that is what we mean by this point. And object-oriented design makes use of these two principles, abstraction and decomposition. Okay, abstraction means to represent only the essential features by hiding the internal complexity. For example, when we switch on TV, we can see the programs on the channel, programs in the channel that we are viewing right now. Or when we switch on, the fan starts rotating, or when we press the accelerator, the speed of the car increases. All these are examples of abstraction. Why? Because take the example of say car. When we press the accelerator, the speed of the car increases, but there are so many things that takes place in between the pressing of the accelerator and the increase of speed. The fuel of the car gets injected to the engine, it gets burned, the energy will be released, that energy will be converted into so the so-called kinetic energy or something like that, right? And that is the ultimate result, or that is the ultimate reason why the speed of car is getting increased. But we are not bothered about any of those things. We only know that when we press the accelerator, the speed of the car increases. So there, the internal details of working, the complexity behind it, it is what we can say hidden from us. It is hidden from the users. We are not bothered about, or we don't know anything about those things. We don't want to. That is known as abstraction. And decomposition means we are dividing the entire software into smaller objects, and the objects will be having their own data and functions, so the dependency between the objects will be very less, so we will be able to manage the software very easily. So these are the descriptions of the terms abstraction and decomposition. We will be learning about abstraction in the upcoming classes because it's an important feature of object-oriented programming language. So we will discuss much about abstraction in that class. So for the time being, just understand that object-oriented design makes use of these abstraction and decomposition principles. Okay, and an object can be considered as an instance of abstract data type. So now we have to know what is abstract data type is. When we talk about abstract data type, there are three important concepts that are associated with it. They are data abstraction that we have seen just now, then data structure and data type. These terms are, you people are familiar with all these terms. These terms are nothing new. But when we talk about ADT, what are their meaning? ADT stands for abstract data type. So with respect to abstract data type, what do we mean by data abstraction? What do you mean by data structure? And what do you mean by data type? Data abstraction, just now we saw, that is, we are hiding the implementation details from the user. Okay, everything that we see, if we take our mobile also, when we press the power button, the mobile is turning on. There are so many activities that takes place in between that, but all those things are hidden from us. We are not aware of those things. So that makes the product much simpler, right? Instead of that, if the entire switching on process is visible in front of our eyes, we will feel somewhat the entire process as complex. So we want to develop a software in such a way that it must be as abstract as possible. That is, we must hide the implementation details without affecting the working of the product. So if we have to call something as an abstract data type, it must provide the feature of data abstraction. The second feature is data structure. So what is a data structure? Of course, you are studying a subject named data structure in semester 3. The same thing. Okay, a data structure is something that is constructed from a collection of primitive data items. What do you mean by primitive data items? All these integer, float, char, double, all these are known as primitive data types in C programming language. I hope all of you remember. So primitive data items means all those are existing already. If we can use all those data items that exist already, and if we can group them together to form a new something, that is known as a data structure. As we know that a civil engineer, a constructor, builds a house or builds a huge building by using all these bricks, isn't it? There's bricks, cement, all those things are already available, but they are molded or they are designed together, or they are brought together in a different way so that we get an entire building. The same way, when we talk about programmer, a programmer can construct a new data structure by using already existing data items such as integer, floating point numbers, characters, etc. So that is the second concept with respect to abstract data type, that is data structure. And the third concept is data type. What's a data type? We know that int is a data type in C programming language. Why we can say that int is a data type? Because using that data type int, we can create so many integer variables. That creation of integer variables is known as instantiation. Okay, so in general we can define a data type as a terminology, okay, that refers to anything that can be instantiated. That means if we can create instances, for example, if I say int a comma b comma c, what do you know about that? Or how will you comment on that line of code? You will be saying that we are declaring three variables of type int. Why we are able to say that? Because we know that int is a data type. If int was not a data type, we will not be able to say that int a comma b comma c is declaring three variables of type integer. We are able to say that int a comma b comma c, this line of code is declaring three variables of type integer because int is a data type. So a data type is a terminology that refers to anything that can be instantiated. So when we write int a comma b comma c, A and B and C, all these three are instances of type int. Okay, so if we have to call something as an abstract data type, all these three concepts must be included in that. If we are ready to, or if we are introducing a new concept which provides data abstraction, which provides the capability of data structure, which also can be used as a data type, we can call that concept as an abstract data type. Is that clear? I'll say it once again. If we are capable of introducing a new concept which associates all these three concepts, that means if the concept we are introducing, say our concept is X, if X provides data abstraction, if X is a data structure, and if X can be used as a data type, we can say that X is an abstract data type. Okay, so why we discussed about abstract data type? It is because objects can be considered as an instances of abstract data type. So in object orientation design, or in object oriented design, classes are known as abstract data types. We will discuss about classes. Okay, class is a very important concept in object oriented programming language. But what is the advantage of developing an application using ADT? That is, what is the advantage of class being an abstract data type? These three are the advantages. First of all, data of objects are encapsulated within the methods. Encapsulated means the data and functions an object hold is inside the object, or it is covered by the object. Nobody else can see that, or if anybody wants to see that, it must be with the permission of that object itself. So it is hidden from the outside world. It is protected from the outside world. That is known as encapsulated. It's also known as data hiding, and because of this, it localizes the errors, because all the errors within the object can be handled within the object itself. So when an error occurs, we can just go through the object in which the error arised. So error correction becomes easier. Okay, and second advantage of developing an application using ADT is it provides high cohesion and low coupling. High cohesion means the relation between the data and functions within an object. That is, inside the object, the relation between the data and function is very high, but between the objects the relation is very low. That is known as coupling. So if you want to modify the entire program, if you modify one object, it's not going to affect the other object very much because of low coupling. At the same time, when we design something within an object, it will be very much useful because the relation between them inside an object is very high. That is known as cohesion. Then, since abstract data type provides a feature of data abstraction, the complexity will be very low, so that it will be very easy to understand and helps to manage complexity. So these are the three advantages that we get when we develop an application using abstract data type. That means in object oriented design we use classes to develop softwares. That is what we are talking about. In object oriented design, when we develop softwares, we use classes, and classes are actually abstract data types. And what do we mean by abstract data type? That is what we saw in the previous slide. Any concept or anything that provides the features of data abstraction, data structure, and data type can be considered as an abstract data type. So the term class, or the concept known as classes, provides all these three features. It provides data abstraction, it acts as a data structure, it can be used as a data type. Hence we can say that class is an abstract data type. Okay, so since object oriented design is making use of classes, okay, we are getting all these three advantages. I hope it's clear to you. So that's all for this video lecture. Now we will discuss two questions that you people have to submit as assignment. The first question is a simple question. You have to write it down. That is the differences between the two approaches, the function oriented design and object oriented design. What are the difference between them? And the second question is we have to explain how this automated fire alarm system can be designed by using object oriented design as well as function oriented design, and then you have to find out the difference between it. I will repeat, you have to design this automated fire alarm system by using object oriented design as well as function oriented design, and then compare the two approach of designing. Okay, now we shall conclude. So in this video lecture we discussed about the two different approaches for designing a software. We also discussed about the advantages of object-oriented design. Our course is all about this object-oriented programming language, so object-oriented design is what we are going to focus. Okay, so that's all for this video lecture. Thank you so much.